Federal government says no going back on plans to revive Ajakuta Steel Complex.
Ajakuta and Kutape will stay in government hands and will produce to the benefit of the people of Nigeria.
Small and medium-scale enterprises to get more assistance from government to grow their businesses.
Looking at increasing the funds available to the Bank of Industry to make funds available to the MSMEs.
The next steps would be to make it easier for them to export.
Nigerian Air Force neutralizes some insurgents and destroys their hideout in Borno State.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss homegrown solutions to Nigeria's socio-economic problems.
Nigeria, like many developing countries, has been grappling with a number of socio-economic challenges that have stunned the country's growth and development process over the years.
Of course, Kirian, has our most pronounced economic challenge is that we operate a mono economy that is heavily dependent on crude oil production, sale, and proceeds, accounting for nearly 90% of our foreign exchange earnings and 80% of our capital and recurrent expenditure. But sadly, we do not have the capacity at this time to refine our own crude oil, and we are compelled as a result to import at a huge cost the very crude oil that is refined in other climes.
That is sad reality, Kingsley, but interestingly, we hear of artisanal refineries in the Niger Delta region, which is the goose that lays the golden egg as far as Nigeria's economy is concerned. Little attention has been paid to how local refineries can be harnessed to meet up with demands for petroleum products in the country, or whether they need additional technology and regulation to drastically reduce the huge costs Nigeria expends for importation of refined products and even for subsidizing the products for the populace.
Well, Kieran, apart from petroleum, 4 decades later, the nation excuse me, is trying to harness its potential in steel production and development, which of course is widely known as a bedrock of any country's quest for industrialization. As a nation, we are still whining and complaining about a so-called international conspiracy inhibiting the revival and takeoff of Ajakuta, Alaja, and other steel companies in Nigeria.
Of course, Kingsley, but we do have a multitude of artisanal companies, some of which legally or illegally exploit the avalanche of solid minerals resources, with proceeds largely unaccounted for and going into private pockets.
Well, to say the least, despite possessing abundant natural mineral and human resources, Nigeria has faced the challenge of efficiently utilizing those resources towards bringing about the much needed economic growth and development to enable it to square up, as it were, with the Asian tigers who were once on the same developmental level with Nigeria but have since left us crawling while they are already advanced with technologically driven economies.
Talking about the Asian tigers, I recall that Malaysia was to have sought for and obtained some of oil palm seedlings from the Niger region during the post-independence era. Today, Malaysia is the world's largest producer of palm oil and third largest producer of rubber, whereas these industries have become moribund in Nigeria. I can tell you with certainty that it's not just Malaysia that is doing well with respect to palm oil, including all the Asian tigers. In fact, in Indonesia, I saw palm oil being converted to fuel, the biofuel for automobile engine.
Well, incidentally, I mean, it's just as we have in the crude oil business, that's to say petroleum crude, you also have the value chain for palm oil, where you have the upstream, the midstream, and then the downstream. Researchers have been engaging Malaysians, for instance, for purposes of converting aspects of palm oil for medical purposes. So they are lessons that have been derived from all of that. So this are stories, of course, we'll get to hear. If you are driving from the airport in Kuala Lumpur into the city of Kuala Lumpur, you see plantations on both sides of the highway. But
very healthy looking.
Absolutely. And then, whereas if you were to go to our own palm plantations here, what is left of them, they all look planted. In fact, the trees are all old because they have since exhausted their lifespan and just dead and standing. There's no replanting.
New seedlings.
That's
improved seedlings.
That's right. That's what they say. There are some improved seedlings, but the pace with which we are facing this doesn't appear to be significant. The same thing with rubber. Rubber we're talking about.
Rubber plantation.
I mean, it's, when we were growing up, we saw rubber trees all over the old Midwest. Today, nobody talks about rubber. Incidentally, Victor Waifo sang about the fall of the rubber business in one of his records, some decades ago. But certainly, who did this to us? You may want to ask. For recent efforts to diversify the economy through agriculture, that sector had been largely import-driven, relegated by the oil boom and the attempt to resort to white-collar jobs by the majority of Nigerians. Interestingly, though, President Muhammadu Buhari and a number of economists have been calling for what they call homegrown solutions to Nigeria's socio-economic challenges.
Well, invariably, they are saying what we are. So we may as well ask, what are these homegrown solutions? How viable and feasible are they? And in what sectors can we begin to harvest low-hanging fruits from homegrown solutions?
Right. Those questions are pertinent, Kirian. We first have to have the solutions before we start harvesting so that we don't fall into the typical Nigerian impatience with solutions to major challenges. But those are questions that will engage our guests in our conversation this morning as we discuss homegrown solutions to Nigeria's socio-economic issues. My name is Kingsley Sadolo, and I welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria, broadcast as always on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, live here in our Abuja headquarters studios.
I am Kirin Umayo. Thank you for also waking up with us this morning as we bring you a fresh edition of the program. And just to let you know, we shall, as usual, serve you the complimentary segments of the show, which will include newspaper review, business sports, and others. For now, let's join Nolene Abel Ame for the morning news. Good morning, Nolene.
Good morning, Kirian and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the early morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari has congratulated the President of African Development Bank, AFDB, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, the Board of Governors and members of staff on the historic increase of capital from $93 billion to $208 billion, placing the multilateral institution on a strong pedestal to drive growth and development on the continent. In a statement by Special Advisor to the President, Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina, President Buhari joins shareholders of the bank and African states and governments to celebrate the feat, which demonstrates the quality of leadership at the helm of affairs and the technical expertise that has been steadily pushing reforms for a smart and dexterous institution focused on alleviating poverty. With the historic approval of $115 billion by the Board of Governors, which will sustain the bank's operations and reach, the President extols Dr. Adesina for brilliantly and diligently taking the AFDB to new heights and inspiring confidence that the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and the African Union Agenda 2063 are realizable. The federal government is set to confront anyone instituting legal action to delay the takeoff of the Ajaokuta Steel Company. Minister of Mines and Steel Development Olamilekon Adebite stated this during an inspection of the facility in Kogi State.
The so-called modification concession agreement does not make sense. If you give the soul of Ajaokuta to place in another hand and want Ajaokuta to function, then you're wasting our time. Ajaokuta and Itape will stay in government hands and will produce to the benefit of the people of Nigeria. No matter whose ox is God. They are preparing to go back to some courts abroad to embarrass Nigeria. But I'm sure the country is capable of meeting them at those points. And we will not surrender our sovereignty to some individuals.
Achieving a well-structured and resourceful legislature that will drive vibrant democracy is possible if the management of the National Assembly close ranks with other key players for the good of the society. This was the focus of the retreat of the management of the National Assembly and the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies held in Uyo, the Akwa Ibom state capital.
The need for the two organizations to operate in unison in order to create a much needed conducive atmosphere for a robust performance of the Nigerian legislature need no further emphasis.
In my opinion, a harmonious and productive working relationship between the Institute and NAS management is the only way in which NILS can better serve the legislature at the national level.
Majority Leader in the House of Representatives, Al-Hassan Ado Dogua, led an advocacy engagement with a group of educationists from the United Kingdom on a process that will enable students at the grassroots realize their potentials. The idea is for Nigeria to bridge the educational gap through numeracy knowledge, which is key to science and technical education.
A Nigeria that no one can say, I'm not employed. No.
We'll be looking forward to more of this engagement in the future. It's a very good advocacy that I think parliamentarians will be interested about.
As economies within the Sub-Sahara region work towards harmonization of standards and promotion of trade within the region, Nigerian entrepreneurs are advocating flexible financial policies to enable them compete favorably in the global market. Government officials who attended the 2019 GEM Expo in Abuja say this is already in the pipeline.
The intention is to get Nigerians to believe in manufacturing locally, because we can't keep importing everything.
Looking at increasing the funds available to the Bank of Industry to make funds available to the MSMEs. The federal government is already talking to some commercial banks to make small loans available as single digits.
Meanwhile, the Minister of State FCT Ramatu Tijani Aliu has pledged the FCT administration's commitment to protect women in the nation's capital from any form of abuse. The minister was speaking at a meeting with the management of the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons.
We do have center in Nyanya, Guapo, and so on that even in Abuja, and we are willing to partner with NAPTIP.
All we need to do now is to work together, to collaborate, to synergize and to strategize. And I believe that both agencies coming together, with FCT coming together with NAPTIP, I believe that we'll achieve a lot.
And on security, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukul Buratai, has formally flagged off Atilogu Udo 1 in Umuahia, the Abia state capital, assuring residents of the 5 eastern states that the program which has been renamed Atilogu Udo, meaning Dance of Peace from the original Python dance, is in their interest to tackle criminality. The Chief of Army Staff, who was represented by the Chief of Training and Operations, Army Headquarters, Major General Enobong Udo, said the exercise will be conducted simultaneously in all southeastern states.
These activities include free medical services, educational support activities, sanitation exercises, rehabilitation of identified dilapidated roads.
In the meantime, the Air Task Force ATF of Operation Lafia Dole has destroyed an Islamic State of West African province ISWAP terrorist hideout and neutralized some of their fighters on the fringes of the Lake Chad in the northern part of Borno State. In a statement by NAF Director of Public Relations and Information, Air Commodore Ibikunle Daramola, this was accomplished through airstrikes conducted on the 1st and 2nd of November 2019, sequel to intelligence reports indicating that the terrorists were using the settlement as a staging area to launch attacks against forces. Accordingly, the Air Task Force scrambled fighter jets to attack the location, recording successful strikes to immobilize ISWAP vehicles spotted under some trees, as well as the destruction of some terrorist structures and neutralization of some of their fighters. And those are the news highlights for now. The program continues with Kirian and Kinsley after the break. I am Nolene Ebel-Ame. Good morning.
The new edition of TV Guide is out, exclusively taking a look at the traditional television and new media. Are they comparable or complementary? Media industry players give perspective on the trends, progress, challenges, and the way forward. Find out on this compelling edition of TV Guide. Expository interviews with stars of the field within our space. Becky Madojemo of NTA, Dave More of AIT, Nifemi Oguntai of TVC, and a host of others. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, also feature Yam Medina.
I'm the CEO and director of Yam Medina Sister Restaurant. I to let me finish.
A TV drama series on NTA. Let's get to meet the characters behind Yam Medina. This edition also presents exciting features on tourism, culture, entertainment, sports, health, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendors near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Want quality sound? Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
Nigeria Diaspora Investment Summit 2019 holds on the 6th to the 8th of November 2019. The summit will take place at the Banquet Hall Presidential Villa, Abuja, Nigeria. Theme: leveraging diaspora resources for economic growth. Sectors: agribusiness, education, training, healthcare, entertainment, sports, hospitality and tourism, infrastructure and real estate, manufacturing, extractive industries, telecommunications, technology and innovation, waste management and environmental remediation, transportation. For registration, visit www.nbis.gov.ng. For participation and sponsorship, please call 090-177-77008, 0817-2244-660. Convened by the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission.
An award that has succeeded to pool a galaxy of stars from the north, south, east to the west, and central Africa, and also those that are domiciled beyond the shores of Africa under one roof.
Want quality sound? Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
Son, being good at something requires strength. It requires pushing yourself. It requires putting in more. The new improved Bornvita is packed with vitality and a great taste.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, in business news, our correspondent, Homegrown, brings us up to speed on the socio-economic impact of the closure of Nigeria's land borders with neighboring countries. Over now to Homegrown.
Before the partial closure of land borders, merchants moved merchandise across national boundaries without adhering to due process, resulting in leakages and loss of import duties.
Patronage of Nigerian rice has increased, and farmers are expanding their farms as well as engaging more hands. Our consumption of petroleum products has reduced by 10.2 million liters.
Value chains were also minimal when borders were porous. Unlike today, the rice mills are springing up all over the country. The gains of land border closure have continued to register advancement in security and improvement in economic imperatives.
Education has also reduced the scale of other transnational organized crimes, proliferation of arms and light weapons, terrorist activities, as well as anti-banditry operations that have been going on.
We refuse entry of 1,111 people who want to enter our territory, but because we have a job, we turn them back. 728 people have been removed.
Meanwhile, activities for the week on the floor of Nigerian stock market opens today, and as always, NTA Business News will bring you closing figures subsequently. That's business news at this time. I am Homegrown.
Thank you, Kolo, for that report. We appreciate that. And next on Good Morning Nigeria is newspaper review.
Our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoebe, is right here with us in the studios for today's review session. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Nigeria.
Bayo, it's good to have you again today.
Thank you. Good morning,
and,
Nigeria.
Yes, let's look at the newspapers we have this morning, beginning with the Daily Sun newspaper. Now, on the right-hand side of the nameplate of the Daily Sun, new minimum wage. NLC calls for impeachment of governors who fail to pay. It's on page 6. And of course, the lead story below the nameplate is borders to remain shut indefinitely. Presidency says a few strategic objectives for closure not yet achieved. It has helped check firearms influx, says the DSS. This is on page 2. And we have a Obaseki Oshomole's prayer over Iyambo attacks. He came to my house uninvited, party chairman. Of course, it's on page 40 of the Sun. Now, Senate to grill CBN over differential exchange rates for projects. It's captured on page 8. And below that, Nigeria loses a $7 billion oil bunkering investment deal to Ghana. Others. Now, the rider, $1.5 billion PLC bill, fear grips Nigeria over loss of fresh existing investments. It's on page 37. And now, below the photo story of the Daily Sun, we have Okorocha Golak fight over $2 million bribe with two riders. He offered me money to deliver his son-in-law, says Golak. He is a liar, says ex-governor. That's Okorocha. It's on page 11. And now at the bottom, at the foot of the Daily Sun, we said Edo police arrest 3 soldiers, civilian, for alleged kidnapping and robbery. It's on page 4 of the Daily Sun.
All right, let's take a look at the leadership newspaper. Leadership immediately below the nameplate. IOC, International Oil Corporations, drive barite exploration to stop 5 billion naira annual capital flight. And below that, constituency projects unconstitutional. This attributed to lawyers and civil society organizations. Details on page 47. Lead story, labor to lawmakers. Impeach governors who fail to pay minimum wage. That's on page 4. And border closure, as Kirian read earlier, Customs extends Operation Swift to January 31st. That will be 2020. Now, right at the foot of the front page, you have 4 headlines. Let's take them. We bought 2 kids for 140,000 naira in Jos. That's page 14. ICPC arrests 2 officials over SIP fraud. That's Social Investment Program fraud. Details on page 2. Now, 36 Character Commission, Federal Character Commission, that is, board members in office after 10-year expiration. That's page 5. 2023, no decision yet on zoning. This is according to PDP. Details on page 23.
Well, let's start with the report about border closure. The headline from the Sun is apparently saying that the border closure is indefinite. However, the critical report is that the president has approved the extension of the operation for, they call it Operation Exit, the operation till 31st of January 2020. And the custom exercise has explained that that is only the first phase of the border closure. The border closure came as a result of persistent failure of the initiative pursued by Nigeria to get the boss to stop their nations from being used as a launch pad of smuggling items across the country. And the Board of Customs and Excise has said that since the closure from August, there has been tremendous success. Particularly, now you can't bring in goods through any of the land borders. Everything has to come through the seaport or through the airport, where there are facilities to scrutinize them. The success by way of revenue is astronomical with the Board of Customs and Excise. And the custom is determined that they will use it as an avenue to stem the influx of smuggled goods. The story, which is very baffling, is the involvement of soldiers in what appears to be kidnapping and, in fact, armed robbery. This happened in Edo, and the Edo State Police Command has arrested 3 serving soldiers. One is a corporal with the 3rd Division at Jos. The second is a lance corporal. He's of the 35 Battalion, Katsina. And the third is a private. He belongs to the Artillery Brigade of Owerri. They were being involved in kidnapping of one person in Agenebode area. The other one was a teacher also who was kidnapped in Fuga, and ransom was gotten from her. Luck ran out of them when a car they snatched from one Mr. Otono. They were going to Lagos State and they were apprehended at Eho and they were arrested. Apparently, these suspects have been identified by their victims. So there's no disputing the fact. The victims have identified them. But it's a big challenge for the Nigerian army. You have their personnel across the nation. You can see one from Owerri, one from Katsina, and there appears to be a network that they are working on this. I think the army must be able to put their hands, because it must be a matter of concern. You remember the Wadume case? There was an army officer, or a captain, who was the kind of the kingpin coordinating the activities there, giving cover for these criminals.
See, it's very obvious, Kislam, that there's no possibility of any success in such operations that require AK-47, requires elements of training to be able to perfect it without involvement of either serving or retired or dismissed service person. All right, so because the accuracy with which they strike and shows that, look, there's element of good training involved. And if you have encountered any victim of kidnapping, who will tell you their stories, because these men don't even hide their feelings. They say everything, even in their presence. Just look, we are connected. It's as simple as that. And when they make a request for maybe reinforcement of arms and all of that, in hours they get them.
It's worrying because it is security now giving way to conspiracy. There's this man, Ali Kwara, who is often employed by some state government to help them where there are challenges of kidnapping and armed robbery. And what he found out in Kano was that they arrested as many as 26 civil defense officers and some army officers who were involved in gun running. He did it practically when an armed robber confessed to him, and he actually laid it by going in the first instance, the second instance, and the third instance where he took money and actually procured arms before he now reported to the army and they arrested him.
Gentlemen, I think what we are seeing now is we're probably also getting into a phase where the military and security and intelligence authorities will have to examine some other aspects of their personnel and others. And I'm bringing in this perspective advisedly. Yes, we've been told that there are some foreign elements that are involved in kidnapping and banditry and elsewhere in the country. But what is emerging is, one, in my opinion, the rate at which service personnel are dismissed. And these are persons who have been trained in weapons handling and all that, and they have no means of survival. So, Kieran, in buttress of the point you are saying with regard to how they operate, that's one leg. Second leg could also be some rogue elements amongst those who are in service, who, on account of their grade, such as the captain who was involved in the Wadume case in Taraba, would say, all right, so let me use this as an opportunity to feather my nest. You have that. But the third leg, which in my opinion perhaps is more crucial, are we dealing with a kind of syndrome here? Look, Nigeria has been virtually at war with the terrorists for the past 10 years. And you have service personnel, some of them have, they have complained in the past, of overstaying, as it were, their tour of duty. Are we having some psychological issues with some of these personnel, or have some of the personnel, with the greatest respect to them, because I mean a number of them have laid down their lives, to ensure that terrorists are beaten back and defeated. But is it necessarily also the case that some of them now have access to some illicit weapons, which they can then use at the end of their tour of duty? Because we also saw a bit of this when there was a spike in robbery cases, particularly in the Lagos and southwest part of Nigeria. Just hang on a second. Say this. If you recall, after we started sending our troops on echo mode operations in Liberia, in Sierra Leone and elsewhere, guns became aplenty in Nigeria. So what are we seeing? Is that part of what we are seeing now? That service personnel in different parts of the country are being picked up, as accomplices in kidnapping and all of that. I don't know.
What is clear is that in every nation there are gun runners. There are people whose business is to do gun business, right? And of course, it's an illegal thing. And after the wars of Libya and elsewhere within that region, of course, there's proliferation of small arms, for instance, across the border. And that is one reason why the present partial closure of our border is yielding dividends. DSS had just said it in one of the papers we read this morning, that has really, checkmated, the influx of weapons, across the border.
Banditry has all of a sudden gone down considerably. Apart from the negotiations in Sina and Zamfara that reduced it, now influx of weapons that has been stopped through the borders has reduced that considerably. But we also need to follow that up, because in the Wadume case, there was an instance that an arms supplier was arrested. And the information he gave was that he gets his arms from Burkina Faso. And that confirms what Kingsley is just saying. They come across the border. But the border closure now, we now have a lead on the entrances. And we are beginning to see
that is one. That is one, gentlemen. You're talking about their supplies, guns and ammunition. Here we're talking about the personnel who use those guns and ammunition. That is the mentality. I mean, why would a trained military officer or otherwise, civil defense or otherwise, take to this kind of business? And as you said, it's almost on an industrial scale now.
And to them, it's a deal. It's like doing business. Now let's go to editorial for this morning. Taken from the Punch newspaper, curbing the menace of cross-border banditry. We'll just discuss a bit of. Let me not read anything more from this. Let's look at it. Curbing the menace of cross-border banditry.
Well, we'll be going back in circle, because it ties to what we are saying. But the other two stories which are worrying is the arrest that the police made in Lagos of a man who was allegedly adopted children from Jos and was arrested in Lagos. He was on the way taking them to Onitsha. And when he was scrutinized, he now gave out the information that he actually bought those children from a motherless baby's home in Jos. Paid 140,000 and he is taking them across to Onitsha. So again, we have to look at motherless babies' home that are supposed to be a sanctuary for unfortunate orphans. Now you now have a situation whereby they have become a commodity for sale. The other story is Nigerian Labour Congress is appealing to state houses of assembly to support Labour by putting pressure on governors who do not implement the minimum wage. Of course, just only last week, there was a meeting of the Joint Public Service Negotiation Council. They are training their state councils on how to negotiate with the state government. So we have not seen the end of the drag as far as minimum wage is concerned. Now coming to the issue about the menace of border, again, we're going back to what we are saying, and the editorial is happening on the fact that the cross-border criminality has reduced recently because of the border closure. And now what they are saying is that we need a bolder initiative, particularly to man our borders. The other time, the Board of Customs and Excise and Immigration revealed to us that illegal border crossings, particularly in the northern fringes, is over 1,500. And unless we devise the means, using electronic means, to monitor our border, we will not be able to physically have personnel that will monitor that border. But the dividends that we're having now is that the road borders are closed and we are having positive dividends. But how long can we sustain that? And it's very necessary to ensure that the economy and criminality will be reduced and the economy will be enhanced if we pressure on that lid for a long time.
When some of us talk about technology in this country, indigenous technology, some may not take it seriously. Because this border issue you're talking about, by technology you can monitor 1,500. As a matter of fact, one camera can have about 50 points, depending on the kind of technology you are using. We have satellites in the orbit owned by Nigeria, launched for us, and we have not been able to make adequate use of them, deploy them properly to be able to serve this nation technologically. Otherwise, how are big nations like America, China, and elsewhere, how are they monitoring their borders? It is by putting personnel there. It's not. It's technological driven. And until we do that, of course, we have to continue having this issue of cross-border banditry, unless we may have to sustain the partial closure of the borders.
All right. Well, Kieran, I'm sure you know the challenges that the U.S. faces with illegal migrants from across the border with Mexico.
Yeah.
That one is different. That one is multitude. It's a different case. That one is a multitude of people. We're talking about criminals who hide. These plans come openly. They want to walk into America. That's different.
I think it is doable. It depends upon the initiative. I can cite the example of Saudi Arabia. They have a large network for their pipelines, for their oil. And from a control room, they are able to monitor every pipeline in their country.
Oh, yeah, that technology is available. There's no doubt about that. Okay, Bayo, well, thanks a lot. The one on labor to lawmakers, urging them to impeach governors who fail to pay minimum wage. I'm sure, I don't know, are they urging the lawmakers to impeach deputy governors or governors? Because you know the relationship between governors and the State House of Assembly members.
Yes.
At the time when we ought to have strengthened the State House of Assembly members to ensure their independence and they are truly the first arm of government, we left them virtually to be in the pockets of most of the governors. So the same people you are now asking them to impeach governors, is it governors or deputy governors? Bayo Atoyebi, thanks a lot for being around. We'll see you tomorrow. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll get ahead with our conversation.
One quality sound. Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
They are there at the crack of dawn. They are there busy preparing while we rise for our day. They are there silently, guarding, waiting, listening, and watching. They are there ready in the sky above and waters below, in the blistering heat of the day, in the dead of night, willing, indefatigable, determined in the defense of the sovereignty of our country. They are our first line of defense and our last. They who have paid the ultimate price in defending us. They are fathers and uncles. They are mothers and sisters and girlfriends and boyfriends. They are brothers and cousins and best friends and neighbors. They are classmates, colleagues, and citizens of this nation. They are our defenders and deserve our respect, our prayers, our thoughts. Nigeria, please support our armed forces.
One quality sound. Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
Do you desire to upscale your skills in the area of archival management? Then you must attend NTA-TV College Special 2-week intensive course on archival management in the broadcast media. Date 11th to 22nd November 2019. Course fee 80,000 naira per participant. Accommodation inclusive. Venue NTA-TV College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. This course is designed for archivists, librarians, and information managers in the private and public sector. Take advantage of the course to upgrade your capacity in digital storage, audio visuals, electronic cataloging, and classification of archival materials, record management, archival security, and much more. For more inquiries, please call 0803 314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College Jos, training you to be the best you want to be.
And if you just tuned in, this is your breakfast show, Good Morning Nigeria on NTA. Our conversation this morning is on homegrown solutions to Nigeria's socio-economic problems. Now, to set the tone for our conversation this morning, here's a background put together by Abdul Jibril.
Like many developing countries, Nigeria has been grappling with various forms of socio-economic challenges that has undoubtedly stunted the country's growth and development process over the years. Despite possessing abundant natural, mineral, and human resources, the country has not been able to utilize these resources towards bringing about the much-needed growth and development. Pervasive corruption, insecurity, unemployment, poor infrastructure, weak institutions, fragile political structure, amongst others, are just some of the seemingly insurmountable challenges. Recently, however, Nigerians from all walks of life at different fronts have begun brainstorming towards addressing the socio-economic problems Nigerians has been bedeviled with. The country's leadership is not being left out either, as President Muhammadu Buhari made the call for homegrown solutions to the country's challenges at the 25th Nigerian Economic Summit last month. At the summit, the president emphasized the need for both public and private sector leaders to look inwards in proffering sustainable solutions to the challenges confronting the country's socio-economic development. Many experts and analysts have also agreed with the president, stressing that most of the socio-economic challenges in the country cannot be solved by external bodies. Now, can homegrown solutions effectively address the myriad of socio-economic challenges the nation faces? What other solutions can be adopted towards mitigating these challenges? These and more guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be providing answers to in a moment.
All right, thank you very much, Abdul Jibril, for that background. We have with us here in the Abuja studios two guests, and we'll be joining some other guests from our other network centers. First, let's welcome the familiar face on the program. Professor Nazifi Dharma is a professor of economics at the University of Abuja. Professor Dharma, pleasure to have you with us. Good morning, Nigeria again.
Good morning. Good morning, Nigeria.
Also here with us in the Abuja studios is Dr. Anthony Chico Christopher, who's an international economist and business strategist. Pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria.
And from our Lagos studio, we are being joined by Shoaibu Idris. Shoaibu Idris is an economist and financial analyst. He's also a regular feature on Good Morning Nigeria. It's a pleasure to have you this morning.
Nigerian Kingsley, fellow discussant and Nigerians, good morning and happy new week.
Thank you. Gentlemen, we are talking about homegrown solutions to Nigeria's socio-economic problems. First of all, let us start from a definitive point of view. Let's look at the homegrown, and what it connotes. Let's begin with you.
Thank you very much, and once more, good morning, colleagues and Nigerians. I was extremely delighted by the pronouncement of Mr. President during the inauguration of the Economic Advisory Council, when he raised a very important, though controversial, issue relating to the fact that we need to collect our own data in order to define in a proper perspective what is ours and what is realistic, rather than relying on World Bank, IMF, and other international organizations. Of course, the international organizations do have monumental resources at their disposal, and they have institutionalized the process of data collection for several years. And therefore, there is the possibility that even if we don't agree with some of the figures that they are bringing, we can only do that if we are able to successfully fund and institutionalize the process of data collection in Nigeria. Way back over 20 years ago, when Professor Adeojo, the former Chief Economic Advisor to Mr. President, was the Chief Economic Advisor, National Statistical Master Plan was developed. And unfortunately, government did not provide enough funding. If you look at the structure of National Bureau of Statistics today, as it is, without successive funding from World Bank and EU, the little survey and data that is being collected couldn't have been there. But now that Mr. President has made his pronouncement, we hope and pray that accelerated sustainable funding will be provided to National Bureau of Statistics. But importantly, the government, through the National Planning Commission, should go back, dust out the National Statistical Master Plan, review it in line with contemporary realities of today. Because the National Statistical Master Plan envisaged a statistical data collection architecture from the federal government level, the state level, up to local government level on a real-time online basis. So that at the end of the day, every single sectoral, administrative and statistical data can be collected in a disaggregated manner that will allow us as researchers, as economists, as policymakers to have realistic and real-time data, so that when you are taking economic, political or social decisions, you are taking the decisions on a realistic basis and evidence basis.
Is that the first step to homegrown we're talking about? Is that a bit
well, you see, if you don't have data, you cannot design policy and address developmental challenges in a realistic manner, because the data collection on a sectoral basis is the first point of trying to tell you what is the problem with the sector. For example, we know that in the economy today, a significant component or a significant proportion of economic activities is provided for by the informal sector of the economy. But unfortunately, not much data is available about informal sector operators. We have mechanics, we have plumbers, we have also artisans and people engaging in informal sector activities. Go to any state government, challenge him, let him tell you how many carpenters are in his state. Nobody can tell you. How many mechanics are in his state? Nobody can tell you. How many plumbers are in his state? He cannot be able to tell you. And they represent the chunk of the economy, and they have so much resources within them, and that resources is existing outside the formal banking sector. And that is why many times when you undertake monetary policy, the transmission capacity and the effectiveness of the monetary policy become low because a significant chunk of our resources exist outside the banking system. So the first point of us trying to address fundamental challenges and problems and then providing a basis for sustainable homegrown solutions is to have disaggregated data in every aspect of our life so that we can have a realistic definition of what are the problems, what are the challenges in that sector, and then we can use those definitions to define specific intervention strategies, policies, and programs toward addressing those problems in a holistic manner.
All right, Professor Nazir Vidama, thank you very much. I mean, your perspective is to the effect that before we talk about a raft of solutions designed at home to also tackle our problems, we should have the appropriate numbers rather than relying on external institutions such as the World Bank, IMF, UNICEF, and so on. But this is not to draw you into the conversation again because we have other guests. We have had on Good Morning Nigeria a couple of times in the past, Kirian, Dr. Yemi Kale, who is the Statistician General of the Federation. And this point was raised, and he did say that indeed those numbers to which we always refer numbers sourced from the same set of persons who gather the numbers from Nigeria. And those are the persons, usually agents, if you like, employed or deployed by the NBS, the National Bureau of Statistics. And it is doubtful whether in recent times anybody has challenged the numbers as put out by the NBS. When, for instance, we're talking about the rate of inflation declining, month on month, year on year, these are numbers coming from the NBS. So is it a question of attitude that, Nigerians always like things foreign? When the World Bank says it, so you ascribe more value to it. When the IMF says it, you ascribe more value to it. As I said, Nazir Vidama, you may wish to respond to this subsequently. But just to indicate that, excuse me, we have another guest this time joining us from our Mina Network Center. Kirian, we've never had a guest from our Mina Network Studios. Yes. I believe so. This is a first for you, just as, yes, we've also had to launch, as it were, our Kano Network Center the other time, twice or three times now. But from our Mina Network Studios, we have Professor Olaleko Shakare Yao. He's a professor of entrepreneurship at the Federal University of Technology in Mina, Niger State, which is one of our neighbors here, by the way. Professor Shakare Yao, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Good morning, viewers, and good morning, our stakeholders over there. Good morning.
We're not sure what the gods will do this morning, so while we are still connected to you in Mina, let's have your own perspective on this. I mean, we have a guest here in Abuja, so the gods are unlikely to do anything harmful. In Lagos, our network center in Lagos is also, as the saying goes, bam. So let's take advantage of our opening to you now to get your perspective on this subject matter. When we talk about finding homegrown solutions to our national challenges, what is on your mind?
Okay, I'm very grateful to be part of this discussion. What really matters in life is it's not when we recognize that there is a problem. Though problem recognition is very important, but what is more important to that is how. Homegrown solutions is addressing how we are going to solve our challenges, social and economic perspective. I'm very happy to listen to the first our professor who discussed about the data, which is the first thing that we see as a solution to know what is the problem is, what are the problems that we have in terms of social, in terms of economic. From the data, that is the bedrock of everything. But what I really want us to also add to that is that challenging the figures, we should be holistic as well. We should try as much as possible to see beyond figures. I'm happy that the professor declared that we could not even ascertain the numbers of carpentry, the informal sector, and so on and so forth. Apart from that, even the qualities and the personalities of these artisans who are stakeholders, that we pray they are the solutions to homegrown, because it doesn't require much of certificates, doesn't require much of degrees. So we need to know what is the status of their personality. And by the time we know the status of their personality, their characteristics, we'll be able to build them in such a way that they will now be the solution to the homegrown we are talking of. Let me give you from this direction. We are happy today that we know that there are a lot of problems that we are facing because the problem of unemployment is there. We all know this. And we know entrepreneurially, people need to now solve solutions by themselves, not looking for jobs. But we have to address it holistically in such a way that the personality of individuals who are stakeholders and careholders of these particular solutions or strategy, we need to develop it. Competency, I always emphasize it that we cannot, because the global world, we have seen taste, we have seen best practices. When we are coming up to give us solutions to our problem, Nigeria has experienced taste. And then we have to grow very well in our competency. So from the bedrock of the statistical data, in knowing the numbers, then we should address competency. By the time we are able to address competency in terms of quality of what is coming out from us, I believe that Nigeria will have its way. Homegrown is a tested approach, very tested. For instance, now we have seen some product from Nigeria that we are patronizing and we are okay with it. So then we need expansion from that angle. So we are praying that we should be able to itemize the solutions, the needs, and then we should be able to itemize our solutions towards it. As at the moment, let me critically talk about infrastructure. We should be able to think of homegrown solutions to our infrastructure in terms of road, in terms of provision of good water, and so on and so forth. And this we can get it when we are able to address competency. In terms of our research and innovations that we are coming up with, we should be using them. Nigeria should patronize our researches. By the time we are able to patronize the outcome of our resources, our researches, honestly speaking, competency will come. And when we have this competency, it will serve as solutions to our problem. This is what I want to provide for now.
All right. Thank you indeed, Professor Sarkiao. I actually appreciate the last bit of what you just said, with respect to the issue of us buying into our research, because as we speak, there are many research results, lying fallow in many laboratories across the nation, both publicly owned or privately owned. There are many of them because Nigeria has good chunk of scientists, that can provide solutions to many problems, because after research work, it ends there. Nobody takes it to the floor of the manufacturing sector. Whatever it is that we've been experiencing over the years, be that as it may, let's return to Abuja here and talk to Anthony Chibo Christopher, who's an international economist and business strategist. Sometime last year, the president of this country came up with a presidential order 5, which is targeted towards ensuring that we have local content in whatever we do, in all strata of development. This time around, he is pushing for home solutions. And historically speaking, in this country, we've had a leader who told us that all known and unknown economic applications have been injected into the system, yet no solution was found. Now, this time we're talking about homegrown. What do you mean homegrown? You have a background, where a nation has grown. You are coming from Switzerland. You have that background. You studied there, and we want you to look at it homegrown in Nigerian version.
Thank you very much, Kieran. There's so much to say, and I'm going to, I agree with the professor. I agree with our person from Ilorin, but I'm going to permit me to put a different perspective in this. My interpretation when our president talked about homegrown solutions, My interpretation is a bit different. I look at it from the perspective where he's saying that we should study what we've been doing in the past, learn from our mistakes, and change within ourselves in our implementation going forward. In other words, change begins with us. Why am I saying this? Because I'm an economic strategist and I'm going to give a lot of strategic solutions. But the first and foremost strategic solution towards solving our socioeconomic problems is our own cultural mindset towards implementation, what we know or what has been said to be correct. Because I could come and I'm going to talk about roads, I'm going to talk about education, they're very crucial. But no matter the data you have, no matter the strategy you have, no matter the policy you have, if your implementation channels are clogged up in inefficiencies and ineffectiveness, nothing will happen. You can throw in 32 trillion into education today, and you will not see the result. You can have impeccable data and implement strategies that you know should lead to emancipation in economic and social problems, but they will lead nowhere. No. So my first take is, in cultural psychology, it is said that the culture is what determines the actions and the minds of the people, and it is actions and the minds of the people that determines the culture. The culture we have now must change. The first thing I would say is put effort in changing the Nigerian mind away from the fact of personal gain, the culture of deriving personal gain in everything that is implemented must change. That's the number one thing. It's a culture. It's even accepted everywhere. Once that culture comes, then my prof and what he has said comes in. Things start working. But with culture there, it doesn't work. Having said that, in an assumption that we can do that, because there are strategies to do that, education, you've heard about it. We keep on saying it. Education, invest in the education of your children, of our children. Invest in the education of our youth. And invest in using, I think it was one of us that just thought about our data and our research. Invest in your own institutional establishments and use their data. Education, it is not a coincidence that the country today that has the highest number of people living in poverty is the same country that has the highest number of children out of school. The name of that country is Nigeria. There is a statistical and scientific correlation between that. We must first, I've talked about the culture. The second thing must be to understand that we must invest in education. And you've heard that before. But one thing that is new now is that what you teach your children 20 years ago, 10 years ago, the youth, is not what you teach now. Educational strategy must change in Nigeria. It must be ambitious, it must be bold, it must be impatient, and it must be businesslike. What do I mean? Let me sum up what I've just said in a few sentences. You need to research as to what is relevant and in demand internationally. And that is what you teach the children. That sums up what I'll say. And that solves by teaching what is the skill sets in information technology, in robotics, according to the fourth industrial revolution. You are giving education that leads to the ability to earn. The ability to earn is a vital and critical step in solving socioeconomic problems. Roads, it's often not understood the link between the simple roads that we have and the alleviating of socioeconomic problems. Everybody wants good roads. You've heard about that. But the blood artery, the artery that carries the essence of socioeconomic development, are the roads. Not just roads, good, sustainable, let me even say concrete or concrete hybrid roads that require low maintenance. Because if the intention is really to take socioeconomic development around the country, it is through roads. The first step is to take a road to somewhere. It is through that road you will take a good hospital there. It is through that road you will take a good school there.
All right, Dr. Chibo Christopher.
Yes.
Thanks a lot for your initial salvo. The points you've made are noted, but I also just want to throw this in so that you may have the opportunity of responding. In talking about revitalizing education, you did say that the curriculum has to be structured in such a way that your children or those who are learning get to know what is happening on the international scene. Some persons would argue you're not training your children to function internationally, but to function domestically and to compete with the rest outside the world. What do you do? Are you going to now have British education, American education, Singaporean education, or what? We'll come to that presently. Let's go over now to our regular guest, Shuaibu Idris. Of course, financial analyst in Lagos. Shuaibu Idris, of course, homegrown solutions, some persons would say almost reflexively that one of the greatest proponents of that in the past century has been Ataturk, who was the founder of modern Turkey. And what Turkey eventually became today was as a result of Kemal Ataturk's policies and then implementation, which Chibo Christopher has also talked about. But from our own attitude, is it possible for us to first address our attitude, policy inconsistency? And some persons would argue policy inconsistency arising from the fact that Nigeria is a client state, and you have many Nigerians who are hawking the ideas of international institutions, hawking the ideas of foreigners, and so we come in here, today is one policy, tomorrow is another policy, the next day another policy, because everybody wants to be a client, and of course make your own cut, and then leave the country in tatters. Do we have the mindset to actually sit down and say, look, we're going to design homegrown solutions, stick to those solutions, and be sure that indeed Nigeria becomes a major player on the global stage?
Kingsley, the questions are multifaceted and multi-dimensional. But let me start first by an attempt to define what is homegrown. Basically, and in simple language, homegrown is a mechanism or a policy or a system that you decide to design to address your own issues in your own perspectives and taking cognizance of your peculiar environment. Now we're talking of homegrown policies that will address our social and political or economic issues. But I think the discussion will leave one key factor there, which is political, because the three are a bit interconnected, interwoven, and together. Political, socio-economic issues. You see, the world has evolved. From 1770, when we had the first industrial revolution in Britain, down to where we are today. If you take a trajectory of the history of what happened in England when the first industrial revolution took place, how many years did it take, say Europe, if I may take them entirely, even though they didn't go on the same phase, how many years did they take to develop? Maybe 50 years, maybe 100 years. Fast forward the Asian tigers. How many years did the 4 Asian tigers take them to grow? maybe in a generation, 25 years, 50 years, then come forward to what has happened to China. When you look at what has happened in various climates, including the great Ottoman Empire that you just mentioned, which is now called Turkey, you realize that they implemented certain economic policies that were fundamentally similar, if not the same. However, these policies were then taken as they were and then domesticated in each of those environments. When you look at what happens to Hong Kong, or in Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, or Korea, you will realize that three fundamental issues define the successes of these four Asian tigers. Number one, discipline. To Anthony did allude to the fact that there is need for culture. I will interpret that to mean discipline. Number two, there is supposed to be some level of consistency. Kingsley, you did state that we are having policy somersault, inconsistency, government comes, government goes, everybody comes in with his own or her own policy. This is an issue for us. So fundamentally, we lack discipline as a country, such that even when we have the policies, we don't have the discipline to implement them to the letter as the way and manner they were designed. Number two, Dr. Anthony again did mention this aspect. Unfortunately, we are such, myopic in our thoughts as Nigerians. We are neither nationalistic nor patriotic. Each and every one of us is me first, me first. From the head, the highest level of governance to the lowest level of Nigeria, maybe with few exceptions, we are not patriotic. And as long as you have policies and you have civil servants, private sector orientated workers who only think for their own narrow and parochially minded interests, we will never be able to develop. Last but not the least, on that tripod point I want to make is the issue of monitoring and evaluation. Consistently, we've rolled out policies from import substitution policy that we started in the 70s down to the nationalization policy of Nigerians owning companies, to privatization policies that we implemented, to commercialization policy that was implemented under Babangida regime, up to even the Obasanjo needs, the National Economic Empowerment and Development Strategy. All these were policies that we have had by successive government, but was there monitoring and evaluation? Was there a delivery room, a situation room that analyzes what were the policies that we intend to implement? Where are we coming from? What are the issues we want to change? And how are we making progress? Currently, we have the National Economic Recovery Program initiated by the Buhari administration. One of the key pillars of the policy is the designing of a delivery room. To this moment, 2 years, 3 years after the implementation of the policy, the delivery room, I'm not sure either in the budget office or the National Planning Ministry or Ministry of Finance or in any of the ministries, I'm not sure if we have any situation room or delivery room as prescribed by the policy. I believe as long as we want to make progress, we cannot, and I repeat, we must not think that Nigeria will be an island. There's absolutely nothing wrong with much of the policies initiated by IMF and the World Bank. They may have their own shortcomings, but we are not an island, and the world is now a global village. So whatever we are doing, we must realize that as of today, we can't start to reinventing the wheel. The economic, development, industrialization, people have made progress, and no one will wait for Nigeria. The earlier we begin to pick and learn the lessons from Chinese industrialization, from the Asian tigers industrialization, from the Turkish industrialization, to what we can do locally and within the context of of a continent called Africa, not just Nigeria, I think the better for all of us. Otherwise, believe you me sincerely, Kieran, Kingsley, and fellow discussants, we will be a state of sorry in Africa and indeed in Nigeria. The next industrial revolution is going to center on knowledge economy, AI, artificial intelligence. Where are we today? We are still battling with issues of feeding, hunger. How do we clothe ourselves? How do we have shelter? Talk less of having the knowledge economy that we will be fighting with other, countries of the world. I think if we don't take time, Nigeria and indeed African continent will be in a very terrible state in the near future.
Well, Professor Shaibu, I don't even know where to begin from, because you have giving us an overdose, of what the situation really is, in the country. As a matter of fact, policy somersault, policy inconsistency, it is the bane. Now, let's look back at China, for instance. It is still the policy put in place by Chairman Mao that China is still working on presently, perhaps advancing it, redeveloping it, in terms of, with respect to the world being, evolving and changing dynamics, of human management. All right, now let's return to Abuja and talk to Professor Dam. Professor Dam, from what Professor Shaibu did tell us now, it's quite understandable the fact that there's no fundamental nationalistic feeling among Nigerians of all strata of life, in governance, and even in public business and private businesses. Everybody is just focusing on what will benefit him, his family, and of course dependents. Nothing nationalistic in nature. Now we're talking about homegrown. In your opinion, would you say that technology has not been allowed to play its role in terms of artificial intelligence, in terms of knowledge-driven economy? When we talk about knowledge-driven economy, it has a lot to do with technology. Please come in here.
Thank you very much. But before I answer your question, there is a fundamental issue I want us as Nigerians to understand. Every single society works on the basis of a tripod relationship: the political, the social, and the economic. But unfortunately, the political is the most important, but it appears to be the most relegated. You cannot have a very good economic or social system in the absence of a political system that have a clearly defined process for leadership recruitment and selection. You can have the best economic policy, you can have the best social policy. If the quality of leadership is low, certainly you cannot be able to achieve anything. It is the lack of quality of leadership that has led to the abandonment of national development planning culture that was put forward by our founding fathers, that provide a basis for clearly defined and sustainable and accelerated development that benefit many. I was at a program last week on comparative analysis between the governance system of China and Nigeria. And one key thing which I have said, which I'm saying, which I will continue to say, is that the Chinese have understood who they are. But importantly, one key feature that has made China to succeed is the fact that they have domesticated the planning culture for the last 70, 80 years. Every 5 years, when the Chinese Communist Party meet, they will ratify the next 5-year national development plan. And a national development plan is all encapsulating because it contains literally every sectoral initiative, policy, and program in a manner that is complementary in nature. Until and unless we come back with that national development planning culture in a way that involved the federal, the state, and local government. And I was happy the federal government recently made a pronouncement that they want to go back to the planning culture. We are even thinking of Vision 2040. I think it's a very good strategy. But in the context of the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning as it is situated today, let me say with all sincerity, it is very difficult to achieve that. We have the National Planning Commission. We have the law that establishes National Planning Commission. It was merged with Ministry of Finance and Budget. It is like executive overdose. The essence of the law that establishes National Planning Commission is to make it as an independent body, not to give any contract, but to supervise implementation, the same problem that we have been talking, to make sure that there is a robust implementation of the National Development Plan in a holistic manner by all the three tiers of government with a clearly defined monitoring and evaluation framework. Now, if you merge the National Planning Commission into a ministry, and from the ministry you now merge it with finance, you are having the same ministry authorizing money, releasing money, supervising projects, supervising monitoring and evaluation. Honestly, there is dilution and distortion related to that. Now, you made mention of an important issue which has been bothering my mind and which I will lay bare today. There is no way any economy, and particularly a developing economy like ours, can succeed in the absence of what is called triple helix model. And triple helix model is a framework that usually brings about researchers, government, and then private entrepreneurs, so that whatever research you are doing, it should be demand-driven, that is relevant to the industry. And government as a coordinator will provide the needed financing that private sector may not provide, and the enabling framework and the linkage, and then the facilitation. Most of the countries that Alhaji Mikati has made reference to, whether it is China, whether it is South Korea, Japan, if you go and see the triple helix model institutionalization, honestly, you wouldn't believe it. I was privileged to be in a program organized by Harvard University in Lagos in 2010, and it is called Innovation for Economic Development. That is when that triple helix, I came across it. And you see, Governor Fashola, then, because he was very clever, immediately after the program, he just set up what is called Lagos Innovation Policy Advisory Council, which I was a member. And then we came up with the policy framework, and then it provided a basis for Lagosians to undertake innovation to be facilitated by government. I think we need to introduce that triple helix model so that whatever we do in research, we can bring it down and then it can provide a basis for implementation.
All right, Nazir Vidama, thanks a lot. If our viewers had some issues speaking out what we're saying, we're having some technical issues with the line serving your microphone. We'll sort that out shortly. No, but still on the line that you were working on, and in fact the issues that all the guests have raised, but Chibo Christopher, part of the issue is this. We talk about lack of discipline, policy, consistency, absence of monitoring and evaluation, culture of personal gain. Is it that we are unable to generate a national consensus on what is required to be done? I mean, everybody knows, virtually everybody knows that a country that cannot feed itself is in a big mess in the first instance. And yet, Nigeria has, I don't know, several square kilometers, thousands of square kilometers of arable land. And here it's a country that is today battling with partial closure of land borders on account of the fact that Nigerians are importing everything, import banana, import plantain, import tomatoes, import rice. And yet we ask ourselves, look, why is it a challenge to say everywhere you go in the country, we have agriculture up and running together with the value chain? Why is it difficult for us to forge this national consensus on how we should develop and then, first of all, feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, give our people jobs, and all of that? Why is it difficult from either a socio-cultural, anthropological perspective, or from a business strategy? Import. Why?
Fantastic question. You see, but there's something very important I must say from the beginning. The world is moving. Nigeria may be where it is today, but the world is not waiting. And the world is not waiting, we must understand that as we speak right now, there is a fourth industrial revolution going on. And that is why when I mentioned education before, I said whatever we are teaching our children must be relevant. When I said relevant internationally, I mean relevant to the fourth industrial revolution going on. That is what we will teach our children. For instance, if we replicate curriculums from abroad in our schools today, we are doing ourselves a heavy disservice. I must make that point. However, AI, artificial intelligence, is on the move. The Internet of Things is on the move. Biotechnology is on the move. They are technologies that we must begin to teach our children, our youth, our ladies, our women today. That is what I meant. Then you mentioned something that is really very serious. Why does it seem, I'll use the word seem, that we cannot build a national consensus on what we are to do to go forward? We have professors, we have doctors, we have everything, all the resources, human, and why can't we go forward? Well, let me use this. I'm going to make a few statements, okay? We are in 2019, all right? So, statement is beginning. By 2027, Nigeria will be amongst the 8 most advanced nations. Okay, let's make the 20 most advanced nations in the world. Statement number 1. I'm just making statements.
Propositions.
Yes. By 2020, let's say 2020 again, 2028, Nigeria will be not only self-sufficient in food and technology, but will be exporting high-tech technology and human resource for high-tech technology internationally. Now, because of time, let me stop. Or let me make one more statement. Nigeria at that time will be not only energy advanced, but will be sustainable energy sufficient. All right? Now, if you're listening to these statements, and you're telling yourself, I'm talking to everybody, not only us here, that this is ridiculous. This is impossible. Where are we now? And you're talking about 2028 is 8 years from now. And you're saying that we are going to be one of the... If the average Nigerian is listening to this, I'm getting to answer you, and is saying that is impossible, then, ladies and gentlemen, it is impossible. If the average Nigerian heard what I said, and said that, well, we can do it one way, then, my brother, it is possible. I give you the example. When JFK, I think it was 61, was saying that the US for strategic reasons will have to land a man in the moon by the end of the decade. NASA itself, if you read, was saying he was crazy. That's the institution that was going to implement that. Said that's impossible. But you see, there's psychology in setting a target. What he did was to set the target and get the nation to believe in it. My answer to your question is that targets must, no matter how ambitious they are, targets must be set. And the targets must be set in sincerity.
Yeah.
It is hard to be sincere in Nigeria, but it must be set in, and we will follow. The consensus will follow. Yes. Sorry about that.
The thank you indeed. Targets are set. You have to set a target that you are prepared to pursue to its logical conclusion. In Indonesia, for instance, there is a place they call a technology farm. When you come there, they have 43 institutions there. As soon as something is designed, it is moved from one structure to the next one for implementation. Before you know it, it will now graduate to another, institution. Before it comes, it will come out as a complete product of its own. And it's like we talked about forging a national consensus, believing that, look, we are going to do this and it must be achieved. And that is why the president is calling for homegrown, so we can pursue and achieve. All right. This is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we get back, we'll continue with our conversation. Do stay with us.
One quality sound. Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
Hold it! Me, I don't cover my hand from oil bunkering.
General, what you going to yarn? What did the yarn say? I don't understand though.
Because it spoil our water and our environment. And it cause our people serious harm. Militants is there. You know good. Me, I not do again Sam. Because why? Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You are about to witness the commencement of the most stimulating and compelling contest on television. This contest is only for the strong, the intelligent, and the talented. Get ready for the Unity Challenge reality TV show. Coming soon.
One quality sound. Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynic. Bigger, better.
All right, we are back, and let's go straight to Mina, where we have Professor Olaleko Sakariao. Prof, you're a professor of entrepreneurship at the Federal University of Technology, Mina. Now, let's talk about entrepreneurship recently. A short while ago, of course, during our news segment on this program, we had some respondents talking about increasing money for the agricultural bank, and of course to ensure that loans are made available for MSMEs, and of course to assist MSMEs to also try and export their products. Now, what do you make of this? Talking about entrepreneurship, and of course we're talking about the Nigerians from, let's say, from bottom to the medium level, and we're talking about people who engage in their own individual businesses, who are hoping that with time they can expand and, of course, be absorbed by a bigger and better industrially based companies. Now, what do you make of the possibility of ensuring that MSMEs grow in this country?
It's very simple, and then I think we are now on Homegrown now. Now that we want to talk about the entrepreneurship angle. I've listened to all our contributors so far, and when the issue of Homegrown, I tried to do a bit content analysis. We are here to even make names out of our local content. We have been hearing, we have discussed at international level, we have discussed a lot about the giants in the world, but we are here to also assess what we have at level of domestic. I expected us now to narrow it down to cities, towns, villages, where we have our strength in Nigeria. And that is where what will take me to what you asked me about SMEs and so on and so forth. Nigeria and Nigerians as at the moment are provisions of loans and support incentives for our small business owners. We are here to understand or focus on our needs. In most cases, it's repetition. Economic, socio-economic problems, or whatever we are seeing as challenges in Nigeria. SMEs, owners, should try as much as possible to be specific, in the sense that every person is now in the city, conceptualizing their ideas in the cities, whereas some of these rural areas, that is where they can harness and they can perform very well, in such a way that the export we are talking about, it should be not only export to another country. Some cities are suffering of certain things. We have to think from the village back to our export ideas should be focused. Where we are going to do, you just mentioned something now that I heard, that there are certain centers in which they are not supposed to be in the town. If we are thinking of these centers, they should be where the raw materials are. And when the finishing want to be done, we move to the cities to do the finishing, if at all. So this is how it can be holistic, and this is how we can make use of the resources we are talking about in Nigeria. AGMIs, all other funds coming from agricultural loans. You see many of us that they are taking this loan, they want to remain in the city. And this particular production cannot be done in the city. That is why people are diverting such funds to another thing entirely. And that is why we are not getting the result. I think for the homegrown and the entrepreneurship perspective is that we should think from rural back to the urban, so that we are going to have rural entrepreneurship first and foremost. Everything involves stages. Unless we are deceiving ourselves, if the issue of the needs of individuals in terms of economic needs, physiological needs have not been settled, we cannot go all these international ideas of talking of artificial intelligence. Let's take it gradually, and let's just be persistent in whatever we are doing. There are technology that can assist us at this moment. If we take this position of from rural entrepreneurship to city, then we cannot be talking of international. So that our research is, my problem now is that the whole place is cloudy now. We want to do everything. We are forgetting that everything has basis. From the background, the first thing, every one of us before we get to the city we are today, we are at one point in time before in the rural settlement. Let us have our technology harnessed to the road first, because here now we have to be specific. The road that will channel us to the rural area, where production can take place, where generation of wealth can start from, we are neglecting those sites. And from that angle, I'm not expecting any result, because if we don't fix the background, the basis, the foundation, we are going nowhere. Now, if our research from the funds they are giving to us now, let us encourage our people. In Malaysia, you see some people, they say, I'm going back to the Kapong plantations. They have all these plantations in the rural area. We may call it rural because to them, to us, we believe that in the rural area there will not be electricity there. No, in their own, they have already fixed the basis. So from when they are moving from that angle, they have enough raw materials for any person who want to establish on value chain, for instance. We have something to, so that we not be importing plantain, not be, most of our chips, we don't have, or we have, but because there is no road to that rural area, rural entrepreneurship is the first thing. When we fix the rural entrepreneurship angle, then that is why I will be happy if Central Bank of Nigeria can look at cities, can look at crops that Nigeria really have strength on. We have strength on certain.
Professor Lalekon Sakaria, thank you very much for your perspective. Kira, it was talking about, tapping into our background in order to facilitate economic development. Well, I want to ask a question, and this time using that background as framing it as the cultural foundations of economic development. And that's why my question is going to Shuaibu Idris, Professor Nazir Vidama, may also respond to that. Again, when you look at international examples, the Japanese or even the Chinese, there are quite clear issues that the cultural foundations enhanced their economic rise. China is number 2 today. Japan is number 3. Japan was, of course, number 2 in the past. And elsewhere where this has occurred, the culture of the people, of course, culture in this case is all-encompassing. Is it also in seeking to develop homegrown solutions that we may have to get back into the study of anthropology, or rather use anthropology to say, look, what are our cultural foundations on which we can build? Take the North, for instance. Areas, I'm just giving you an example, say Kano. Now, you ask yourself, why have we failed to leverage on the tannery business? It's collapsed. It was thriving in the past, but it's collapsed. And yet there are cultural foundations for it. The dye pits, you also have cultural foundations for it. If you go to the Nnewi axis, blacksmiths and so on and so forth, what could we have done to use that as a basis or now even encourage it? And if you were to come to Benin, Edo State, for instance, I mean, I've heard a lot of motions and movements about setting up technology hubs and all of that. The best furniture makers in Nigeria can be found in and around the Benin city. And there is a cultural foundation for this. Why have we not developed this? Why, if those who make Ashoke and elsewhere, why have we failed to explore this as part of the homegrown solutions rather than just looking for prescriptions from IMF, all kinds of things that are designed in the boardrooms?
Kingsley, thank you very much for that question. Before I answer, let me thank Kiriam for promoting me to a professor. I will come over to Abuja to collect my certification. You see, Kingsley, Nigeria is a very, very funny country, and we are indeed a bit of a disappointment to mankind and a disappointment to entire African countries and indeed black man. Take the example of China first. China originally was socialist. When Chairman Mao started the planning mechanism and down to the current leadership, what were the Chinese doing? They said, we will not be capitalists, we will not be socialists, we will not be welfareists, but whatever is good in capitalism, we will pick it and domesticate it. Whatever is good in socialism, we will pick it and domesticate it. Whatever is good in welfareism, we will pick it and domesticate it. Did we do that? No. Back to your question. Yes, the Benin axis is one of the best locations in Nigeria where you have furniture. Remember in the 80s, we used to go to Auchi, we used to go to Benin City from Lagos to buy our furniture, bed, cushion chairs, and what have you. We all know the dyeing of clothes in Kano, in Daura, as well as the tannery business that you alluded to. Kingsley, we missed the bus. Societies were moving. Technology is moving forward. We were not catching up with technology. We were doing a bit of a closed door kind of environment, as if we will continue to operate like an island without having to be connected to the global ecosystem that gives us the opportunity to compete effectively. Had China remained where it was during Mao's 18th time, when it was 95% agrarian, and the agricultural system that they were practicing was whole, and then with our cutlasses and their cutlasses and hands, will China have been where it is today? The answer is no. The system was not just domesticated, but foreign technology, largely from Europe. In Germany, for example, they went to Germany, picked some of the best, had partnership, took them to China, and began to develop plant and machinery that they were using for their agriculture. In terms of automobile, they went to America, went to Ford, went to Chrysler and the other car manufacturing plant, took some of the best, had a partnership, and went in to domesticate the international technology that was available. Did Nigeria do the same? The answer is no. Now, on my closing, Kingsley and fellow discussant, we must tangentially touch about our political system. Believe you me sincerely, Professor Nazib has mentioned this, that political, economic, and social issues are interconnected. As long as Nigeria decides to continue to be doing democracy as we are today, we will never develop. And I make bold to state that this kind of political dispensation that we are in, 4 years, you elect somebody, after 4 years you have to spend a lot of money in a time and in an environment where resources are scarce. You have to spend money to do election. The person has 1 year to learn the ropes, and then another 2 years to work. Then by the third year, he or she begins to campaign for second term or what have you. Will we ever develop? My heart bleeded last week when I heard that the current Senate president categorically stated that he will never be able to consider anything other than a bicameral legislation that we have. Should we foreclose having, first and foremost, a homegrown political dispensation which will now nurture and implement a homegrown economic and social policies that will take out Nigerians from being a poverty capital of the world as we stand today?
All right, Idris, thank you so much. I understand your passion, with which you are making this contribution this morning. You're so sincere and frank about the situation. But of course, we have to ask you to withdraw the idea that Nigeria is a disappointment to mankind. We can still do better with people like you who are bringing ideas on what can be done, to change the course of history of the nation. We thank you indeed for your contribution. And he did make sense, in what he's saying, because I talk about technology all the time. I recall an interview I had at the University of Hebrew University in Jerusalem with the vice chancellor of that university way back in 2014, and he told me that Israel sleeps and wakes up with science and technology. Say Israel eats, drinks, science and technology. Without science and technology, Israel will not be in existence. So which means that if we have not really tried to do something in that direction, at home here, of course, then we would have been overtaken by the world. We have tweets now.
Yeah, we have tweets, but just before we take those tweets, I don't know whether this is a subject that probably will have a carryover. Because you recall, as part of our independence, 59th independence anniversary conversation, we talked about the role of the elite, bureaucratic elite, military elite, political elite, and all of that. Now, talking about homegrown solutions, that's an issue that Shuaibu Idris raised. I mean, quite aside the fact that, of course, Nigerians would disagree that we're a disappointment, as you already hinted. He was talking about how the Chinese and the Japanese developed by having linkages with elsewhere. Is this a Nigerian problem, for instance? Singapore, where we talk about Lee Kuan Yew, part of what Lee Kuan Yew did was to send out Singaporeans to the best schools. And then they came back. The Chinese, up to today, they still send their own students out, to foreign institutions in Europe and in the US. But why is it that amongst us, the Nigerian elite, those who have the funds, those who don't have it, who will then raid the public treasury, will send their children and works out, and then say, no, stay there. Then we'll be relying on diaspora remittances to get. Why can't we bring them back?
And for all the men and women that have been arraigned for stealing funds in this country, they become sick all of a sudden. The moment they become sick.
So what, can we overcome this? Because if there's a deliberate policy, send. I recall the Murtala Obasanjo regime tried to do this in the 70s. They sent, some young Nigerians out to East Europe, Romania, and elsewhere on technological training courses. Some of them came back, but again, there was discontinuation of that policy. But why is it that we can't send our own children out and then ask them to come back again to be players in the economy?
Some of them came back, but the policy did not allow them to be functional.
The reality is that if you don't do one thing, will continue to run in cycle. The quality of political leadership and the leadership recruitment process is the driver towards achieving everything we have mentioned. And I want to use this opportunity to appeal to Mr. President and the National Assembly. Let us look at the Electoral Act. Let us review the Electoral Act to do three things. One, make it compulsory that every single election by every political party must be through direct primary, nothing like delegate, because that is when people that are of good character can be elected by people without giving them money. Number two, define a clearly threshold for contribution to political party. Everyone that claims to be a member of political party must make financial contribution to that political party and must make the payment online, linked to his BBN, and put a maximum that anybody can contribute.
Prof,
until you do that, good people cannot come into the leadership process. And without quality leadership, political, social, and economic policies, however good they may be, they cannot be achieved. What makes China to succeed, Korea, Singapore, is the quality leadership.
Well, Kirian, this subject recommends itself for further conversation, I suppose. But we'll sort that one out subsequently. A number of tweets that have come in, Kirian. Let's go through them. First of all, Akimboyewa, government must ensure that Nigerians are integrated into a social network of mutual empowerment. We must also sensitize our youth on the importance of ethical and cultural values if we must liberate ourselves from violence, corruption, bad governance with important poverty.
Law Alpha C, but I'll take the last paragraph of his contribution. The present administration is known to believe and champion local content policy by making Nigerians believe in themselves and that Nigeria is great.
Ishaq Abdullahi, the attitude of our political class giving out motorcycles to the youth will not address unemployment.
Exactly. Akeju Olaboju say, I'm not sure we can easily apply a unique and common homegrown solution to the myriad of our socio-economic problems due to our differentiated cultures and values.
Dele Jack Solomon, the myriad of our challenges cannot be solved by external bodies. Homegrown policies to address Nigeria's challenges will be sacrosanct to national progress and prosperity. Okay, those are the tweets that we can take in the meantime. We'd like to thank you for sending in your messages. And also at this time, we'll also appreciate our guests from our Lagos Network Center, Shuaibu Idris. Shuaibu Idris, of course, if he went into academia, he would be a professor many times over. That's right. Shuaibu Idris, thank you very much for being with us. Also, Professor Olaliko Sakaria, who is maiden guest from our Network Center. Good morning, Nigeria. Thanks a lot for being with us on the program today. And here in our Abuja studios, Dr. Anthony Chipo Christopher, international economist and business strategist. Thanks a lot for being with us. Thank you. Last but not the least, regular face, Professor Nazifi Dama of economics at University of Abuja. Thanks a lot for being around.
Thank you very much. Allah bless Nigeria and Nigerians.
Yes. All right. And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Of course, we hope you're going to join us again tomorrow when we return.
Yeah, we're not just here. It was a busy weekend for sports. So we're going to have some sports stories right now because Djokovic won his 5th title in Paris and still sorting ahead. Let's go back to our sports desk.
It's the fact.